In this film analysis, I will be analyzing and exploring the ways in which the characters Zach and Tyler in the movie The Peanut Butter Falcon meet at this pivotal point in their lives where they are both very lonely and in need of connection, and they find each other and build that connection despite their differences of Zach being atypical as a person with Down syndrome, and Tyler, who is neurotypical and does not have Down syndrome, though he has emotional and mental health issues from trauma in his life. So basically, they meet at this pivotal point in their lives where they start to build this bond together and go on these crazy journeys together. And I watched this movie once and I really related to it. I chose this film because I felt like it really related to me in my life, as my little brother has autism, and I grew up kind of noticing the differences in the ways that he communicates, but that people tend to think that he just simply can't communicate or he's not competent communicating, when really he just communicates differently. And there's ways that atypical and neurotypical people can meet and communicate with each other and build bonds and connections as human to human. So that's why I chose this film. I thought it was a really important topic, and plus it fit the assignment perfectly in terms of finding a movie that portrays a character versus a group, or a character versus another character, or two groups who have differences in culture or ability or race or background, age, whatever it is, that, or even gender, that's a big one too, that change or affect their ability to communicate with one another. So some things that I think are really important to understand in terms of communicative differences, as I stated before, is that people who have different abilities, they're still able to communicate in their own way. They are still competent often. They understand everything that's going on. They just can't communicate the same way that you can. So there needs to be a level of respect and understanding and treating atypical people with dignity and equality and humanity as you would with anyone else. Just the only difference is finding a way where there's a common ground or a way for you guys to communicate with one another, which sometimes can be hard, but in this movie, you can clearly see that for these two individuals, it was not. It was very natural, and I will get into that now. So Zach is the main character, and he has Down syndrome. His communicative competence is really relative to him and his specific abilities to use the tools that we do to communicate. So in terms of linguistic and strategic tools of communication, he has them. He can use language and strategies to communicate things, but he just has his own way of doing so, and his linguistic and strategic tools and development and his communication may not be as developed as ours. The same thing applies for him in terms of discourse. It may not be as developed as a neurotypical, but he can still understand ideas and concepts and thoughts and have communication and conversations about such topics and exchange those kinds of thoughts and ideas through communication, which is communicative competence. His sociolinguistic skills are developed enough for him to express himself to others and connect ideas and thoughts and feelings, but they are just different than ours, and some may say that they are not as developed as ours. A lot of atypical people with communication struggles tend to not be as developed in these areas, but that does not mean that they're not competent communicators. They just struggle a little bit more, they're not as developed, or they just communicate differently. Before I move on, I would also like to add to his sociolinguistic skills and development that he actually did display a very advanced sense of sociolinguistic skills, in the sense that he was able to communicate and connect with people of all different backgrounds, genders, differences in situations. And I believe that this is because he is atypical, that he has had to grow up and develop skills in communicating with people who are different from him, because most people are different from him. But moving on to his wide range of communication behaviors, Zach doesn't always follow the guidelines or the rules, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't understand or coherently comprehend directive that is given to him. He's just a young man who has a mind of his own, and he will follow directive if he wants to. A perfect example of this is him running away from the nursing home. He is extremely smart. He plans his escape with an old lady at the nursing home in exchange for pudding. This man is smart. He is super passionate. He can express his thoughts, his experiences, his desires. And he does so to not only Tyler, but also Eleanor, who also becomes a very prevalent main character in this trio dynamic that Tyler, and Eleanor have. He can listen and engage. He listens to Tyler like Tyler is his role model, and they just met and built this bond. He is able to listen, and he is able to attend. He's especially engaged with Tyler and Eleanor, obviously, because he built this connection with them in scenes such as when Tyler and Zach drink together, or have these like one-on-one bonding moments together where they talk and have discourse about their lives and their dreams and things that they've experienced, such as adversities. And you begin to see over time that they really build a bond over this engagement and these moments where, yes, they have different communication skills and abilities and they communicate differently, but they are able to reach this common ground where they communicate so well and connect with each other and build this brotherly bond. He's also engaged with Eleanor in scenes such as when they're dancing around the campfire together. I believe that at first he was kind of opposed to Eleanor as a, person to become close to in his life, although they obviously had care for each other, because she was a part of like the authoritarianism over him, and he didn't feel like she saw him as an equal up until she joined along with Tyler and Zach on their adventures. And I believe like Tyler kind of had to pull Eleanor aside and be like, you can't treat him differently. Like, he needs to be treated as an equal because he is an equal. And Zach began to be very recipient to this, he was able to receive this. Moving on, Zach can be extremely supportive. So in scenes such as the scene where Zach and Tyler are sitting on a boat together, and Tyler clearly appears to be upset, and Zach picks up on this nonverbal cue and displays empathy as he sits next to him and says, Tyler, I want to give you all of my wishes for my birthday. And Tyler cries. And in these moments, you can very clearly see that they're forming this strong bond with one another that was very unexpected, because all they did was cross roads when they were both at these like very pivotal points in their lives where they both had these missions and things going on. Then again, completely different backgrounds, completely different abilities and forms of communication, and they are still forming this bond. So the way that Zach shows empathy shows that he perceives more than his own reality. He perceives other people's realities. He perceives other people's experiences. He perceives the humanity in others. And Zach, I don't think, needs to care about how others perceive him in his specific case, because he has differences that are relative to him in the sense that he communicates differently. He has this kind heart and this authenticity to him that is so true to him and allows him to have successful communication and connections with people who are different from him. So why does it necessarily matter what the external perceptions of him are? Especially with atypical people, we find that there's a lot of judgment, a lot of ostracization, and a lot of ignorance surrounding the perception of atypical people, and it can feel dehumanizing. So I don't think that Zach should necessarily concern himself with that and just maintain who he is and his sense of self, because I think he's doing amazing. He is, at the end of the movie, not only committed to pro wrestling and the saltwater redneck and the experiences that he had throughout the movie, kind of being able to live this dream of his, but he is also committed to his new relationships with these people that he now feels very close to, almost like a trio family unit, and that is Tyler and Eleanor. Therefore, Zach and Eleanor and obviously in Tyler are able to see past all of their differences. They're all very different from one another, specifically Zach from Eleanor and Tyler, because Zach is the only atypical one out of the three, and he's able to see past the differences and communicate and connect and build relationships, and so is Eleanor and so is Tyler. So really, that just goes back to the fact that he really shouldn't concern himself with the perceptions of others and just continue along the path that he's on, because he doesn't seem to struggle in terms of connecting and communicating with people who are open to respecting him. So throughout the movie, there were numerous conflict scenarios where Zach showed his ability to tune into nonverbal cues and follow directive and have listening skills when it was necessary, because he would kind of follow the lead of Tyler in getting out of those situations in kind of a conflict or an emergency situation. And Zach also showed empathy for Tyler when they were having emotional moments where there was definitely some emotional weight. And when Tyler got beat up after helping Zach fulfill his dreams of being a pro wrestler and becoming the Peanut Butter Falcon, Zach really showed that sense of empathy to Tyler. So you can see that he has all of those communication skills and interrelationship skills. So I do not have any critiques for the communication skills of the character Zach in the movie The Peanut Butter Falcon. I think that he displays an authenticity that is true to himself. He's able to have this self-expression and listening skills and the ability to learn and understand and ask questions and have empathy, and all of those things make a competent communicator regardless of where you're at with those skills. As long as you're tuning in and paying attention, we all have different forms and ways of communicating, but he definitely has all of those skills inherited in his personality and his communication and social skills. So relative to his differences, I think he's an amazing communicator. In some ways, arguably, I think he's a better communicator than me because I'm very antisocial and don't go out and meet people and make connections the way that he did in this movie. I believe that Zach is a competent communicator and displays a wide variety of communication skills and overall is great at communicating and having interpersonal relationships.